take John Kerry down to the Vietnam Memorial and show him the 58,000 names carved on that black stone and ask him if the Senate and Congress and the people of the United States had done what he asked us to do when he spoke to the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, to recognize that we didn't belong in Vietnam. You know, McNamara recognized that back in 1967. Imagine if America had woke up in 1970 and said, let's get out of Vietnam. 2 years worth of names disappearing from the Vietnam War. Imagine if politicians had decided they're not going to let American boys die in Vietnam for their political ambition, but recognized in 1967 that A, Vietnam was not a threat, and B, American boys don't need to continue dying there. If we'd gotten out of Vietnam in 67, how many more thousands of names would have disappeared? Then ask John Kerry, there are 902 names that are going to be carved on the next Iraq memorial already. How many more names do you want on that memorial, John Kerry, before you recognize that this is a war that cannot be won, does not need to be fought, and we must get out now. It's with a great sense of pride and humility that I stand before you, and I gratefully accept this recognition of not just my efforts, but of all of our efforts to make the United States of America truly representative of the ideals and values that are put forward in the Constitution of the United States of America, ideals and values that we all must strive to achieve on a daily basis as citizens of this great land. Thank you very much. Yeah. Democratic accountability, and you've had to listen to me flap my lips for a little while, and now you can get to hold me accountable by asking me some questions for the next couple of minutes. Does anybody have any questions out there? Yes, sir.
Yeah, I want to know, how tall are you?
I used to be 6'4", but I'm getting older, and I'm sure. Yes, sir, in the back.
William Pitt from True That. How you doing? How effective would your on-scum inspections regime have been from 91 to 98 without the threat or use of force on behalf by the Americans?
How effective would UN weapons inspections have been from 1991 to 1998 without the threat of force? Well, let's first of all understand that we were there to implement international law. A police officer in the town of Boston is not going to have any effect implementing the law of the land here in Boston unless he has a gun on his side that he has the authority to pull and use when required, or have sufficient backup so that the common criminal knows that they're not going to get away with it. It's a Chapter 7 resolution calling for Iraq to disarm. Without the viable threat of force backing up this resolution, it has no weight whatsoever, and the Iraqis will not comply. Iraq complied with their obligation to disarm, not because they wanted to, but because they had no choice. And the manifestation of having no choice was military might of the United Nations, and let's wipe away all those other nations that pretended to be in there and deal with us with the military might of the United States there. So without the United States backing up this resolution with force, the Iraqis would not have complied. The problem is, what was the United States military really doing? Backing up a resolution which the United States government made a determination in 1991 they would never allow to be fully implemented, or providing military power for a secret policy of regime change. And see, it's the same thing. A cop can have a gun, he can wear a uniform and a badge, but is he enforcing the law of the land, or is he enforcing the corrupt practices of a secret administrative policy objective, thereby carrying out illegal search and seizures? You dishonor the military of the United States of America by having them do anything other than defend the people of the United States of America, defend the Constitution, and because we have signed the United Nations Charter, be in a position to enforce international law as set forth by the Council. I guess it's a long-winded answer to that. Yes, sir.
I have a question that bothers me inside my heart. Who or what gives us the moral right to go into another country and talk about their weapons of mass destruction when we're the only country that ever dropped atomic bombs on the civilian population, and we have the most weapons of mass destruction, and we do nothing about it in our own country? Who gives us the right to go over there? Please.
The short answer is, if you live in a hypocritical world, what is morality? You know, we are a nation, I said that we are a sick nation. We're a nation that's ill, and the manifestation of this illness is Iraq. Now, Iraq, we tend to talk about Iraq since the invasion in March 2003, but Iraq's been an American problem even before Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait in August 1990. Iraq was an American problem in the 1980s when we started supporting Saddam Hussein. We may not have realized, but Iraq was an American problem in the 1960s when we turned a blind eye to Israel's acquisition of a nuclear weapons capability in violation of non-proliferation. Iraq became an American problem when we dropped 2 atomic bombs on 2 Japanese cities in 1945. Because when we talk about weapons of mass destruction, when we talk about getting rid, look, I'm somebody who believes in disarmament. I would like to see a world free of nuclear weapons, a world free of chemical weapons, a world free of biological weapons. But let's remember how we got to where we're at. We built the bomb, the Russians got the bomb. The Russians got it, the Chinese got it. The Chinese got it, the Indians got it, the Indians got it, the Pakistanis got it, so on and so forth. Israel got it, now all the Arab states want it. A handful of European countries have it, therefore maybe some South African nations want it, like South Africa did actually build a bomb. Brazil might want it, Japan might want it. Everybody's going to want it as long as it's there. So how do you get rid of nuclear weapons? You've got to walk that puppy all the way back to the very beginning. You're going to get rid of one bomb, we got to get rid of all of them. Pardon?
We have to be the leaders and start getting...
That's right. If you want disarmament, disarmament needs to begin here.
That's right.
I love my wife and my family too much to ever explain it. If the United States of America could develop a political system that wasn't destructive of those who participate in it, I might want to do it. I can be more political doing what I am today, more effective than doing what I am today than for running for election. The next book, I don't know what the next book will be. I don't write for money. I write to get a message out, and it just depends on what message I have to offer and what message the publishing world is prepared to allow me to offer. I continue to write op-eds and articles, and I'll just keep doing that so long as I have a relevant message to put out there. I have information that I think is of value for people to consume. Yes, sir.
I think there's a general sense among American people that we're in a trap because we have Iraq in a situation where a withdrawal of American troops will create more turmoil than it solves. How can we respond to that fear that people have?
That's the toughest one because, by and large, even though we're a nation that I call sick, democracy is sick here, the sickness has found itself in people who are basically morally correct people. We live under the notion that we broke it, therefore we have a moral obligation to fix it. And so whether or not you supported going to war, now we have this horrific moral quandary called, we're there, how do we get out? I already used one analogy of the corrupt foundation. We're not going to fix this problem. It's just not going to be fixed. That's a tough thing for people to accept. But if you think of Iraq as a nation on fire, and it is, the fuel that feeds that fire is the presence of American occupation troops in Iraq. We need to disengage militarily from Iraq. We need to let the Iraqi people sort this mess out themselves. Mahatma Gandhi said it, I'm going to paraphrase it because I haven't memorized this quote, but he talks about people dying in war. He said, does it matter to them whether they die from a bullet fired from the oppressors and from tyrannical forces or from the forces of liberation and democracy? The bottom line is they're dead. And we keep saying, how many Americans do we have to have die in Iraq before we wake up to the fact that we're not going to win this war? Well, how many Iraqis are we willing to kill before we wake up to the fact that we're not going to solve their problem? The Iraqi people people are the ones that are best positioned to solve the Iraqi problem today, and we need to help them by getting out of Iraq and out of their area.
Right.